Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do a spoilery book chat for Abaddon's Gate, which is the third book in the Expanse series. I have done spoilery chats for the first two books, so those are going to be linked in the cards and the description box. As always, if you have not read this series, you're going to want to click off this video pretty soon, but I will have links to some spoiler-free content because I absolutely love this space opera series, and I definitely recommend checking it out for yourself. But otherwise, let's get into some spoilery thoughts. So first, let's talk character perspectives. And I'll be honest, I was really missing Avassalia in this one, as well as Bobby to a lesser extent. Of the perspectives we did have, Holden was definitely my favorite. I'm always someone who is most attached to the characters I already know, and you will hear that in all of my videos talking about this series. But I just really like Holden. I like how naive and idealistic he is. And of course, his perspective also gave us the most intimate look into the Rossi crew, which I always enjoy. I'll be honest, I did struggle somewhat getting into the other perspectives. I like that Bull's perspective gave us insight into what was happening in the OPA and definitely gave a larger scope of what was happening in the events leading up to getting into the ring and all that. But Bull as a character I didn't find to be particularly interesting, and that's the same thing that I would say about Anna. I did like the setup, a lesbian couple with a cute kid. I was immediately intrigued, but her as a character I found to be a little bit flat, and a bit of it does come from the fact that I don't always love a lot of religious talk in my books. Certainly it wasn't overly preachy, but it just isn't a trait that I find is something I really connect with in my stories. And so I can see that her perspective again was done on purpose, that she was very integral to the parts of the story towards the later half, but as a character herself, I found her very forgettable, and I don't really care if she shows up again. And finally, of course, we have Melba / Clarissa, who was arguably the most interesting of the new characters, but I did struggle with her perspective a lot because she is in some ways the villain of the story, or at least the villain perspective, because she is there to bring down Holden and bring justice to her family. And I just found her very frustrating to read about, particularly towards the second half, because I felt like the authors were trying to win us over and make us sympathetic towards her, to make us like her a little bit. And I did not feel that way, and I felt frustrated that I got the sense that the authors were trying to do that. And as soon as I see an author trying to push something to me and I don't really buy into it, I struggle a lot. So I'll be honest, I found her chapters really frustrating, and it's not like we're supposed to love her as she's like trying to take down Holden, but I just found her to be very black and white in terms of her thinking, and then all of a sudden they were trying to make her a little bit more redeemable, a little bit softer, and yeah, for me, I did not buy it. I realize this is a really unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people that actually really like Clarissa, so I'd love to hear from all of you down below if you had a different experience reading her, at least in this book. So I'd love to hear that, but for me, she was a struggle. So I found her chapters interesting, but also grating in a way. So let's talk plot points a little bit. And first, I really liked how the book opened, addressing the fact that they now have this new technology thanks to the Proto-molecule, but they acknowledged the fact that it came at a very high price, and that so many people died. There were so many victims that led to them getting this new technology. I'm really glad the authors wrote that in there, because I do think it's very reflective of our own history, because of course, if you look around the world, there's so many times that we had medical advancements or other technology that came about through brutal consequences. And so you see that in this future, and they're trying to grapple with the morality of that. So I really like that they started the book prefacing that and really setting up this moral conundrum. And within this book in general, you really get to see a lot of morally gray characters that are just making questionable decisions, or just imperfect decisions, or rather you realize that you're not even sure what the perfect or correct decision is in a lot of these cases. And that complexity is something I really like in these books, because yes, they're fun and full of action, but at the same time they seem very thoughtful, and I just think that the authors are very purposeful in what they're writing. After the prologue, I do feel like the book had a pretty slow start, and certainly I enjoyed spending time with the Rossi crew, but because there were other perspectives and they weren't connected at the beginning, it just took a while to get going, or at least as the reader to see what direction the story was going to take. So I do feel like it was a slow slower start, but once the pieces came together, the story became really immersive, really satisfying. I do like the choice of having the documentary crew ending up on the ship, because what it did so well is highlight the fact that the crew themselves are so closely knit, because you get to see them having to deal with outsiders on their ship, and even just the uncomfortable conversations when they can't decide whether or not they have to invite them to the weekly crew supper. And again, it really just shows how close they are. And there was just some really good banter that I thought, came from having these other people around and in the way. From there, of course, we have Clarissa setting them up to look like the bad guys, and Holden putting out a message, supposedly, claiming the ring, and they are of course forced to go through the ring. So I thought the setup was fantastic of forcing everyone through the ring. It seemed very plausible, because once Holden's crew was going, and then the OPA was going to follow them, and then of course, like Earth and Mars, they can't not go, because it would look so bad if they didn't. They need to make their claim, or at least be part of that political maneuvering. And so I think it's totally believable. It throws everyone into the mix, and it's just such a good setup for like political tension and action, and so much miscommunication. And along those lines, I gotta say that I love the fact that even though it wasn't actually Holden, it of course looked like it was him putting out this message, and everyone believed it because he's done this so many times before. And even afterwards, there are so many points in the story where different characters are making remarks and jokes about the fact that Holden just tells everything. And so there's not even just one, but like 2 scenes where he is dishing all of the backstory with Miller and so forth. And the people that are hearing this story are saying, yeah, I totally believe that you're spilling your guts to me, because that's what you do. And even Clarissa at one point is saying that she doesn't like Holden, but he does not lie. He tells the truth and just tells it to everyone. And so I love that they are just highlighting his character flaws so well and tying into the story in just a hilarious way. I thought it was so well written, and just love that. From there, I want to talk more about the Proto-molecule, and I'm really happy that this book gave us a lot more explanation about what was that thing that came and ended up in Venus. And I really like that, because from the get-go, there really have been 2 things that have hooked me on the Expanse series. One is the crew of the Rossi. I love them so much. I care deeply for their safety and their character arcs and all of that. But the other thing is the mystery around the Proto-molecule. I am a sucker for ancient alien technology, and I just wanted to know more since it was first introduced in Leviathan Wakes, and we actually get a lot more. So we get somewhat a confirmation, the fact that it did come, supposedly to actually go to Earth and use that organic matter to make these gates. And we know, of course, that the aliens that first created this technology are no longer there. But I like the setup of that. It's one of my favorite tropes I see in space opera, is if there's this powerful ancient alien that created this amazing technology and they're gone, who killed them off and what happened? And so I really hope we get more explanation later on, because it's such a good mystery. And at the same time, I will say that I love how much explanation we got, but at the same time, we almost didn't get anything, because these books are very based off soft science, or at least there isn't much hard science in them. So you're really not getting a lot of hard explanations, and this is probably a good time to bring up Miller. So I absolutely love that we get to see Miller come back in a way, just because I love his banter between himself and Holden. And while it's not technically him, not in the true sense of it, you do still get that back and forth. But what you get in this book is just a very mysterious Miller, and like Holden describes it so well, how he's not fully connected, that sometimes he just doesn't make sense, and he's just always cryptic. And you find out that he's somewhat a manifestation of the Proto-molecule, but not really. I kind of picture it as like a ghost in the machine, and we just never really get a good hard explanation for what he is, what he represents. And I both find that very frustrating, because I am someone that really likes clear understandings in my science fiction. But at the same time, I love it, because instead we get these wonky kooky explanations told through Miller's voice and through his kind of personality and persona, you know, interpreted to Holden. And what does that mean? And I just think it's so well done and so frustrating all at the same time, but like, I mean that in a really positive way. I love those scenes, particularly the last scene going back and forth between Miller and Holden was amazing. I love the fact that they suggest that at the moment it doesn't appear that any aliens are coming through the gates to come for Earth, but they suggest that that could change at any point in time, and maybe they're just lucky that it's not. And so I think that that's probably the last thing I want to talk about is the ending to this book, because in my opinion, in all of the books honestly, but they do a really good job in this one, the authors always leave us wanting the next book, wanting the next piece of the story, without it being a huge cliffhanger, but just the possibility of what is to come. And because I have read further in the series, I'm going to try to keep this always really vague, but it's just knowing that there's more out there. And then we also get the reflection of how this is going to affect humanity, because we get to see the possibilities for larger families, of expanding humanity to different planets and colonizing and exploring. And it's just new potential for humanity at a point in time where they're almost at a standstill, where they have conquered and filled out to the livable places in the solar system, and then they are stuck, and Earth is overpopulated, and Mars is this barren place that they have transformed and terraformed, but they really don't have anywhere else to go, and the belt is not really a home, it's a place to work. And I just love, again, that this book is just opening up the possibilities for the rest of the series. And as we go through the later books, I'm definitely going to be reflecting back on that, because I think it's so good, and I'm so excited for the potential of where the series could end up based off of what I know so far. So I think that's it for my discussion here. I would love to hear your thoughts down below. What did you think of the new perspectives, especially Clarissa? What did you think about the information we got about the proto-molecule and the gate? And I'd love to hear your predictions for where the rest of the series is going, especially for those of you that have not read ahead and are just experiencing the series for the first time. As well, if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do read a lot of science fiction, including the Expanse series, as you can probably tell. I also read some horror, fantasy, and thrillers. And if you're watching this video and already subscribed, thank you so much. You can still help me out with a thumbs up and sharing this around online. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.